Hey guys, this is Joe. Thanks for tuning in today. This video is a bit of a departure from what I normally cover, but I felt compelled to make it because I received several comments on my Goliath video associating him with the biblical Nephilim. Together with this, I get pointed to several internet stories about extravagantly tall human skeletons that purportedly point to evidence of these Nephilim. In this video, I will examine who the Nephilim were in Jewish and Christian thought, as well as understanding who the Bnei Elohim were in the biblical text, and explore archaeological findings of giant skeletons and shed some light on this seemingly very popular topic. So who were the biblical Nephilim? I start with the verse in Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, which is perhaps one of the most enigmatic pieces of scripture in the Bible. It is dealing with the prelude to the biblical flood story. The text reads as follows.
And it came to pass, when man commenced to multiply upon the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of the nobles saw the daughters of man when they were beautifying themselves, and they took for themselves wives from whomever they chose. And the Lord said, Let my spirit not quarrel forever concerning man, because he is also flesh, and his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of the nobles would come to the daughters of man, and they would bear for them. They are the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown.
So you see, I've taken the liberty to translate Bnei Elohim as the sons of rulers, and you'll see why I did that momentarily. I feel that we need to translate and go through this because often Bnei Elohim and Nephilim are conflated. Within Rabbinic Judaism, there are several different explanations as to who these Bnei Elohim were. The oldest rabbinic text we have dealing with these verses is the Aramaic Targum of Onkelos. A Targum is a translation. Onkelos was a famous convert to Judaism. His life story and works are worthy of their own video for a later time. The Targum dates to the 2nd century CE. He translates Bnei Elohim as Ravravai, or sons of the mighty, literally giant men. The Targum uses the word Giberai for Nephilim, which can also be understood as great, mighty, or giant men. A literal reading would seem to indicate that mighty men took advantage of the weaker populations and had their way with the women, who in turn gave birth to mighty men like their fathers. It is unclear whether this reading understands these men as being actual physical giants or mighty men. In the Midrashic works, which is Jewish homiletics, in Bereshit Rabbah, or Genesis Rabbah, one of the earliest Midrashim that we have, which dates from 300 to 400 CE, renders Bnei Elohim as judges. In fact, this source adamantly rejects the possibility that Bnei Elohim should be understood literally. The great Tana, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who lived in the 2nd century CE and was considered to be the author of the Zohar by many traditional Jews, was absolutely opposed to the literal understanding and actually cursed one who taught the literal meaning rather than the interpretation that Bnei Elohim are judges. The Midrash continues and offers several reasons as to why these judges are referred to by this bizarre term. The Midrash explains that they were privileged and did not have to deal with the hardships of life. They presided over the calendar and commerce and generally ruled over the people for generations. In short, they were a type of aristocracy who saw themselves as absolutely superior to the rest of mankind. Given the power that they had, they actually were. The Midrash further explains that the Nephilim are those who fell and caused others to fall. As they were the leaders of the generation, they set the example for everyone, and society became lawless. Although definitely not a rabbinic source, or even a Jewish source for that matter, we have a work that seems to show that mainstream Judaism of that time rejected the idea of literal sons of God, or B'nai Elohim, and rather took it with this idea of judges, or great men. This idea is mentioned in the writings of Justin Martyr in his dialogue with Trypho, which dates between 155 and 160 of the Common Era. Trypho was a Jew who purportedly espoused mainstream Jewish positions. In chapter 79 of the dialogue, Justin makes the case that the sons of God were the wicked angels that had revolted from God. Trypho didn't agree to what Justin was saying, and I quote, "The utterances of God are holy, but your expositions are mere contrivances, as is plain from what has been explained by you, nay, even blasphemies, for you assert that angels sinned and revolted from God." The Babylonian Talmud, which dates from 500 CE, does make cryptic references to the view that the B'nai Elohim were godly beings, i.e. angels or demons, that came down and took on human form and intermingled with the daughters of men. This idea is further elaborated in later Midrashic works. Rabbi Saadia Gaon rendered the sons of God in his tafsir, which was an Aramaic translation of the Torah written in Hebrew letters, as Ala Sharaf, or a noble person. English speakers might recognize the word sheriff, which actually comes from Arabic. He also renders Nephilim as Al-Gevurah, which is mighty or giant, as was rendered in the Targum Onkelos. During the time of the great Jewish biblical commentators of the Middle Ages, these views were crystallized. There are a few different views that emerged. The first and most popular view, held by most biblical commentators, is mentioned by Rashi, which is an acronym for Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki. He mentions both teachings, but gives primacy to the view that understands B'nai Elohim to be referring to judges or nobility. He renders Nephilim according to the understanding of Genesis Rabbah, that the Nephilim are those who fell and caused others to fall. However, Rashi also adds that in Hebrew, Nephilim is another term for giant. The second answer that Rashi gives in his explanation is pulled from the later Midrashic works dealing with the fallen angel view. According to Rashi's first interpretation, and that of the majority of the commentators, these judges or aristocracy took advantage of their positions to exploit the powerless daughters of men or common people. This exploitation led to the breakdown of society. The second view, which is held by several great commentators including Rabbi Abraham ibn Ezra, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, and Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, adds a twist to Rashi's understanding. They agree that B'nai Elohim were judges and nobility, but that these people were from the descendants of Adam's son, Seth, while the daughters of men are to be understood as the descendants of Cain. Nachmanides, also known as the Ramban in Hebrew, examines all of the aforementioned theories and offers his own, namely, that the B'nai Elohim were the original descendants of Adam, who was the true Ben Elohim, or Son of God. His children, until the generation of Enoch, were truly mighty and superior humans. After the generation of Enoch sinned by committing idolatry, they became physically inferior, according to the Ramban, to the previous generations. The union between the forcibly taken daughters of men resulted in offspring, i.e. the Nephilim, that were superior in stature to the average person, but inferior to their fathers in size and strength. The final view, which many of those who are searching for this type of video already know, is that the term B'nai Elohim is referring to literally as godly beings, i.e. angels or demons that came down and took on human form and intermingled with the daughters of men. This is alluded to in Talmudic literature and later Midrashic works. Nachmanides, or the Ramban, after explaining all of the above, and even offering his own, which we just read, concludes that of all the explanations, this literal translation that the Bnei Elohim being godly beings fits best. But it requires delving into the mysteries of the subject. What's interesting about this, Nachmanides was considered a great Kabbalist, and traditionally the great Tana Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai is considered to be the author of the Zohar, yet we find that he was absolutely opposed to the literal teaching that they were godly beings, and actually cursed anyone who taught the literal meaning rather than the interpretation that Bnei Elohim are referring to judges. There are other Midrashic works and pieces of scripture that refer to the giant size of Sihon and Og, the king of Bashan, but for brevity's sake, I will not delve into those. Further, reading anthropomorphic and exaggerated Midrashic literature literally, in most cases, is not the way the genre is to be read and understood. These homilic teachings are to be understood as esoteric teachings of the Torah that are couched in stories. Until now, we have been dealing strictly within the framework of Rabbinic Judaism, from antiquity until modern times. However, there were other Jewish sects outside of the realm of Rabbinic Judaism. Within these communities, evidence has been found that they had and used the first Book of Enoch. For those who don't know, the Book of Enoch is the source for the idea of fallen angels and the idea that the Nephilim are their descendants. Fragmentary evidence of this book has been discovered together with the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran. The oldest of these fragments date to the 3rd century BCE. It has also survived in fragmentary form in ancient Greek and in its entirety in Ge'ez, if I'm saying that right, which was and is the language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible. It's worth noting that the Beta Israel Jews of Ethiopia also have the Book of Enoch in their scriptures. The Book of Enoch in Rabbinic Judaism is considered an apocryphal work and is not included in the Jewish Bible or studied. The book was very important in the early days of the Christian Church. Early Christian writers such as Justin Martyr, Eusebius, Clement of Alexandria, Origen, and Commodanius believed that the sons of God in the book of Genesis chapter 6 verses 1 through 4 were fallen angels who engaged in unnatural union with human women, which resulted in the begetting of the Nephilim. Modern Christians follow the lead of Augustine of Hippo and others who do not hold any significance to the Book of Enoch. Some have argued against accepting the book by reasoning on Jesus' comment in Matthew chapter 22 verse 30 that angels do not marry. Still others, perhaps following the lead of Jewish scholarship, saw the term sons of God as referring to the descendants of Seth. There is little doubt, however, that the Book of Enoch was influential in the molding of New Testament doctrines about the Messiah, the Son of Man, the Messianic Kingdom, demonology, and resurrection. In brief, the Book of Enoch does espouse the view that the Bnei Elohim are fallen angels, and the Nephilim are their offspring. One who is interested in its contents can find scholarly translations of it online. In summary, there is room for the view of fallen angels in Judaism, but the vast majority of commentators chose to understand the term Bnei Elohim as referring to elite humans that exploited the common people and caused a breakdown in society. Hey guys, this is Joe. After putting this together, I realized that this is a very long video, so I decided to break it up into 2 pieces. Please tune in to part 2, linked above and below in the description.